Star Trek: The Next Generation. Shadows of the Past. Prologue. Excerpt from the Dissertation of Non-Corporeal Entities by Spock of Vulcan, 9th Appended Edition, Stardate 8534.08. Knowledge is one factor in which the flow of time constantly alters and requires revisions of what was once considered sound and valid assumptions. The number of appended revisions of this treatise in itself is an example. In my original introduction to the subject of this work, I discussed the nature of life in the known galaxy, which, at the time, was entirely too limited and so in error. Limiting ourselves only to the Milky Way galaxy, despite our advanced instrumentation, one can only speculate as to the true number of star systems, as well as the number of planets and planetoids. This uncertainty allows for the true scientists to base their knowledge only on what we do in fact know. Anything else would lead to assumptions, using incorrect data, thus leading to incorrect theories and statements. I therefore limit this work to the galaxy as we know it, limited though it may be. It is estimated that in the part of the galaxy that we do know, 15.08% of space is inhabited by life forms from microscopic to the size of small moons. Some even larger, much larger. Life can be found in the harshest of environments, even to space itself, yet they all have something in common. Of the myriad forms of life, it is calculated that 99.56% have a physical body that depends upon a source of elements and energy to provide the needed requirements to keep the life form alive. However, the remaining 0.44% are an entirely different matter. These numbers should now be revised upward. It is my belief that physical life makes up 99.15% of existing entities, with 0.85% being incorporeal, that is, not having a purely physical body. These numbers may change again as more life forms are encountered. While it is rare that incorporeal forms meet, much less interact, with the corporeal, such encounters are as varied as such relationships between species can be. Oftentimes, the two are so different of a nature that neither recognizes the existence of the other, even in the closest of proximities. Other times, both become aware of the other, resulting in violent interactions, peaceful interactions, curiosity, or just total apathy. There were those interactions in which only one form, normally the non-corporeal, realized the existence of the other. In these relationships, there are beneficial ones, for example, the Organians. In contrast, there are those incorporeal beings that are simple predators, such as the energy-absorbing black clouds found in the Hyzal expanse. These asteroid-sized beings slowly travel through space, absorbing whatever energy they can find, from living beings on planets to solar energy. While the black clouds are destructive and deadly in the extreme, they are no more than mindless predators feeding to stay alive. There are a few others, though, intelligent and malevolent, that purposely seek out corporeal forms for their own purposes. So far, it has been fortunate for those who encounter these dangerous and possibly deadly entities that each has had an exploitable weakness, despite the differences between corporeal and incorporeal. The challenge for those who should encounter these energies is to find that weakness in time, for sufficient time to do so is not always assured. Chapter 1. Lieutenant Margaret Giles stepped around a meter length of column from the ruins. She paused for a moment to look around. Nothing new. Same barren ruins, same gray rocks strewn around, same whistling wind whipping across the dry surface. Not that she had expected anything else. She let out a quiet sigh at the task she had to look forward to, walking around more of the same barren landscape as she had for the past 3 months for 2 more hours. Had she only known exactly what this posting had been like before she had volunteered for it. The assignment sounded like a fast track to promotion, an ultra-high-level security job, and a super-secret station. She was one of 15 security officers that roamed the ancient ruins. Each was as highly skilled as they were highly armed. Every security officer that went on rounds carried enough armament to take on an entire troop of rogue Klingons by themselves if need be. The thing is, she had yet to figure out why. At the onset, they were told that there would be no communication off base for the duration of their tour in order to protect the secrecy of their location. That in itself would be easy enough, since none of them knew what planet they were on to begin with. They were also sworn to secrecy about discussing anything that they saw while on assignment. Also easy enough, there was nothing but rock and ruins. The station was fairly basic, no more than you would find on a simple planetary archaeological expedition. Yet all of this only increased her suspicion that there was definitely something very big going on here. She had heard the word gateway once, but was that the name for the planet, or what was going on here? All of the ragtag looks of the ordinary was on purpose, she had determined, in case some intruder started to snoop around. There was nothing that looked extraordinary about the base, or the 5 scientists that constantly explored the ruins. Yet even the scientist expeditions were not what they seemed. 3 would wander through the rocky surface, seemingly to explore the ruins, while 2 went somewhere else, specifically the same somewhere else, every day since she had been here. She and the other security guards hated being left out of the loop on what was going on. After all, how could they be expected to do their duties if there was so much left unknown? But what was there on this planet that needed security? From what she and the others could tell, there was absolutely nothing. Nothing in these ruins. Columns of gray rock were strewn around, somewhat reminding her of the ruins she had seen in Rome on Earth. Large boulders, wind and sand, and that was it. No metal, no artifacts beyond the stone work, no energy sources, and no life forms. Taking a deep breath of stale air, she pushed on. 9 more months, then she would be rotated out. The wind had already picked up and started to pick up some of the rough sand. The sound created strange howls as it blew through the formations. She hated the blowing sand. After a full-duty cycle outside, it would take nearly an hour to get all the grit out of her hair, and her mouth would taste like dust for even longer. She stopped suddenly as a ghastly howl cut through the sound of the wind and caused a chill to run down her back. Instinctively, her hand reached for her phaser pistol. There was no animal life on this planet, and only marginal plant life, but the howl that she had heard was not caused by the wind. Giles backed up against a tall boulder, looking at the expanse before her. Several boulders were strewn about the area, from the size of a shipping crate to those of a runabout. Blocks of stone formed partial walls here and there. Upright and falling columns stood out in the distance. The wind was picking up more sand, causing faint dust devils to form among the landscape. Again, the low moan of the wind echoed among the cold rocks. Nothing out of the ordinary. As she imagined the sound, another howl sounded out, something like a cross between a canine and feline sound. A bit closer this time, close enough to get the adrenaline going. Giles pulled loose her phaser. This was special military issue, twice as powerful as the standard Type 2 phaser. She tapped her comm badge, feeling a strong and fast heartbeat beneath. Giles, to base. Nothing. She tapped again as she slowly edged around a rock against her back. Giles, to base. Report. Her only reply was another howl, louder and not too far off. Whatever was making the sounds was heading in her direction. She scanned the area again, but saw nothing unusual. She quickly took in the tactical assessment of her situation. The boulder at her back eventually led to a series of crisscrossing paths among the boulders. Such would provide cover for normal attacks, but also limit her own defensive posture. What limited her attacker's vision would do the same for her, but not hinder anything using its sense of smell to track her. In addition, if her opponent was some type of animal, as it seemed, she would be at a disadvantage, as a smaller, more agile creature could easily traverse the paths between the rocks faster than she could. Directly in front, 50 or so meters away, were some partial ruins. A small corner of a block stone and a short fallen column could provide some protection from a rear attack, while allowing a clear view of any oncoming attacker. Another howl split the air, and she felt her skin chill at the sound. Fear was not something she had much experience with, but she had to admit that at this moment she was scared. Something primordial within her had started her natural fight or flight instincts. Her thoughts went back to various vids showing large predatory animals tracking and eventually killing their prey. At the time, she wondered about the importance of such information to security officers. Now she knew, and wished she had paid more attention to them. Clearing her mind of such thoughts, she focused on the only important question at the moment. Could she make the ruins in time? There was little choice. She had to make it if she wanted to survive. Taking a deep breath, she made a jump start and ran toward what she hoped was a safer haven. As she ran, she could see in her mind's eye some dark thing spring out behind her in chase. She could almost hear its paw pounding in the ground, a hot breath on her neck. She dove over the stone column, rolled, and came up with phaser ready, but there was nothing but empty ground. Giles backed against the wall, panting from exertion and fear. Feeling the solid protective rock against her back somewhat relaxed her. She could clearly see the boulders that she had just left, but nothing moved. Nonetheless, she pulled free a small photon grenade from her belt and laid it down on her knee. She couldn't have imagined all of this. Trying to calm herself down, she tapped her badge again. Giles, to base! Come in! Dandridge here. Go ahead, Lieutenant. Dandridge, I'm about 1.5 kilometers southeast of the base. There's something out here following, hunting me. Repeat, Giles. Something is after you? Affirmative. Some type of animal. I've heard it howl 4 times, but have yet to see it. Are you sure? I'm not picking up anything on life scans other than our people. One of the scientists did take out a phaser drill today. Perhaps that is what you heard. Giles rolled her eyes. She certainly knew the difference between a phaser drill and what she had heard. Negative. I tell you, there's something out here. Request backup. There was silence for a moment before Dandridge replied. Lieutenant Skell is perhaps 10 minutes from your position. I'll send him straight away. Just sit tight. Giles let out a breath of relief. Good. Tell him to be careful. Will do. Contact me if anything should change. Dandridge out. Giles frowned. Lieutenant Commander Ben Dandridge was in charge of the security team, but she wondered how he had made that grade, and now was not the first time. There was nothing wrong with the man, other than his total lack of instinct. He questioned anyone's gut feeling about some event as though he lacked any himself. Dandridge wanted proof and probabilities, not feelings. There had been a few times in her own career where gut feelings had been the only thing that had saved her from an early death. She couldn't imagine anyone in an active security role surviving long enough to make LC without relying on their instincts. Skell, on the other hand, was just slightly over the moderate edge. He was quick to put hand to phaser at the slightest sound. He had fought in the Cardassian War and had learned firsthand what a slow response to anything unusual could lead to. Skell was silent, agile, and very precise in what he needed to do. She couldn't have asked for anyone better to come to her aid if she truly needed it. Minutes passed by since contacting base, and there had been no other sounds beyond the wind. She shook her head side to side quickly, as if to shake out her thoughts. Could she have imagined everything? Then she saw movement among the boulders. The shadowed form was indistinct, as though not quite physical, and remained partially hidden in the shadow and rock. It moved quietly, graceful. She was unable to tell whether it was bipedal or just large, but based on its movements, it was predatory. She tapped her comm badge. "Giles to Skell." "Skell here," replied a deep voice. "The creature's in front of me, but is partially hidden. I'm going to take a shot when it gets clear." "I'm another 5 minutes or so away. What does it look like?" "Can't tell completely," she replied as her heart began to race again. "It's staying in the shadows, but it's large." "I'm not picking up anything on my tricorder but you. I'm going to loop around and come up on your left flank." "Confirm," she replied, feeling the rapid thump in her chest. "Don't take too long, Skell." The form stopped its movement, standing behind a crate-sized boulder. Giles could only imagine that it was staring at her with hungry eyes, judging distance, terrain, and potential responses by its prey, her. She leveled her phaser just as the shape leapt from its cover toward another outcropping of rock. Its speed was incredible. Its new position was behind a much larger rock, but would have to come through a clear distance for the next cover, a fallen column. At least she saw the thing was bipedal. She thought for a moment that it could be one of the base personnel, but no one could move that fast. The form moved again toward the ruins to her right. An orange phaser beam passed slightly overhead. The second pulled to the right. The third shot hit home, stopping the dark form in its tracks 10 meters away. Still indistinct, but definitely humanoid, the creature stood a moment as if considering what had just happened. Giles felt the same way. Her thumb quickly ramped up power on her weapon as she fired again. The orange-yellow beam of phased energy struck the form as what looked like its chest. The powerful beam, which at that setting would have vaporized a good-sized building, harmlessly passed through the form. Its dark head lifted up to focus on Giles again, but instead of charging her position, it fled into the ruins. "Damn," she said to herself as she considered her options. The creature would now be able to use the ruins and rock to flank her position, and she wouldn't be able to see until it was too late. If she moved from where she was to gain another defensive area before being attacked, but it was a large field of open space. She couldn't be sure that the attacker would not circle around behind her. He could just as easily retrace its direction and wait for her to come to it. She tapped her comm badge. "Skell, where are you?" There was static at first, but then his voice came through. "Another 5 minutes, maybe less." "Listen, this thing is bipedal, about your size. It's very fast. It's also phaser resistant. I hit it dead center with no effect." "Come again? I didn't hear that." "Skell, I hit it with full phaser and nothing happened." There was no response. "Skell!" Still nothing. A howl sounded out behind her position, sending a sudden cold chill up her back. She wasn't just scared now, but on the verge of panic. Giles prepared to fire again when she felt a grenade at her knee. She quickly picked it up with her free hand, thumbed the detonation switch to contact, and prepared to throw when the creature appeared, and hope she would have enough cover. A shadowy form suddenly stood up on a rock 3 meters away. On instinct, Giles threw up a protective arm and fell back with a scream, only to lose her grip on the grenade. 4 events occurred in 1 split second. Giles saw the black form vanish away in midair. She heard a sinister, almost insane laugh, and then the metal click of the photon grenade hitting the rock behind her. A searing white flash was the last thing she saw or felt before she was apart in the explosive detonation. At over 2 meters tall, Skell was fast for his size. He heard the detonation of a photon grenade and saw its flash over some ruins ahead. He sped up, phaser drawn. A moment later, he had come up to a sudden stop, phaser moving over the entire area before him. A blackened crater lay a few meters ahead, along with the badly charred remains of a human body among some rubble. He knew exactly who that had been. He looked around but saw no trace of the creature that Giles had reported. Skill to Dandridge. Go ahead. We detected a massive energy discharge at your position. Confirmed, he replied as he slowly walked closer to the scene. Giles is dead. Probable photon grenade detonation. I am not seeing anything else. Tricorder scans do not reveal the presence of any other life forms. Request a team to come out and scour the area. Very well. Team A dispatched to your position. Maintain location and report anything unusual. Dandridge out. Skell cast a glance at the blackened form that had been his friend, and whom he had hoped might have been more in time. What could have caused this? He scanned the area again with his tricorder. Nothing. The planet was free of animal life, and no ships had been reported within light years of the system. Giles had been stable enough as far as he knew, and not prone to a panic attack. Yet there was no evidence of any creature like she had reported. He looked at the ground. It was loose enough that he could make out Giles' footprints. She had been running from the boulders to his left to what was now her last resting place. There were no other tracks that would indicate an animal. A slight breeze picked up again, causing him to turn in the direction he had came. Then a howl split through the air to send a chill